How to be the coolest tenant in Sydney. It is tough to get a rental property. Rental values are going up and it's competitive. So we're going to teach you how to be the coolest tenant in town. Stay tuned.
Good morning. Namaste.
Namaste.
How are you this morning, Mark?
Good, Sienna. What about you?
I'm well. The sun's shining, so I can't complain. But it was a little bit chilly waking up this morning. It's freezing.
11 degrees out there, everyone. Make sure you're rugging up. It's 11 degrees out there in this beautiful morning. Sienna, you're in the rental business at Novak, particularly in that leasing side. You are witnessing some strange changes out there. We're coming into the absolute peak period of rental season. This is like Wabbit season. It's rental season, and people are moving left, right, up and down. They're positioning themselves for 2023. So they're making that move and getting into what they dreamt of, what they need rental-wise, and it's bloody hard.
Yep. Stressful too for prospective tenants coming into Christmas. There is a lot of two-bedroom apartments that a lot of prospective tenants are wanting, especially in the northern beaches near the beach. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about tips and tricks for tenants to be the coolest tenant in Sydney, and how to get a rental property with the best application.
And a lot of these things don't cost any money, don't cost any time, but it's like a bit of a technique, a bit like karate, and it's about knowing what to say, when to say, how to say, just basically pre-packing your application up so it can't go wrong, because sometimes you may put it forward and you think it's cool, but it's not cool. We're going to teach you how to be cool with your rental application.
Well, I'm going to start off with giving you a question, Mark, because I think that we'll just start off easy. Now, what do landlords, what's the most ideal tenant look like?
For a landlord, I want a tenant that's going to look after my property, and I want a tenant that's going to pay rent on time. That's it.
Yep.
Now, what does that look like on an application or on a piece of paper? I guess it's many, many different ways, shapes and forms and colours, and it is an educational guessing game for landlords. They are taking a punt by choosing their tenant, so they really want to see well-founded information, documentation, to know that they're minimising the risk on choosing that person.
Yeah, adding on to that, I do think it's really good for a landlord to also ensure that the tenant does have long-term stability. If they were to vacate within 6 months and do a break lease fee, the landlord also needs to keep in mind that they are going to be putting the property on the market again, and this can affect the landlord in costing reletting tenancy fees, advertisement costs, and also vacancy of the property.
Yes, I think look, as a landlord, when you're looking at someone coming into your property, I think everyone has to remember, this is like, it's almost for a landlord, it's like a bag of cash. It's like $1 million. And they're saying to the real estate agent, we want you to look after this $1 million for us. We want you to maintain this asset for us. And then part of that looking after that asset is, okay, we need to have rent coming in. So when we're selecting that tenant and that application comes into the office, and you want to be the coolest tenant, you want to project stability to the owner. You want to project that you just won't have any problems with paying that rent, and you are going to look after the place like it's your own. So I think that the first thing people do is they look at your past. They look at where are you coming from? Were you renting through a real estate agent, and did you look after that property well? So if you can document that, i.e., I think you mentioned off air before, Sienna, getting their full bond back. How does that look?
Yeah, look, there's a part in your application where you can put your references, and we always do want to provide for you to provide us your property manager, your previous property manager, or your current property manager. Therefore, that we can get in contact with them, ask for the routine inspection report. The routine inspection report is essentially the outgoing routine that all property managers do after before the tenant was to vacate the property. This routine inspection report outlines whether or not they have kept the condition of the property well, and also can determine whether or not they receive their bond back. And as a leasing consultant, being able to getting provided that routine inspection report will always ensure the security of the will ensure the security for the landlord. Therefore, we'll get an idea whether or not that prospective tenant will take care and maintain that property.
So, Sienna, when someone comes through a place, like, do you reckon? Okay, this is an honest question. When someone comes through an open house, how much of your gut is right? So when they come through and you go, yeah, they're going to be a cool tenant, or hang on, that's a little bit scary. How much of it is your gut right? Because then my next question after that's going to be, how do you project that as a tenant? So, what do you reckon? You got a gut for people when they come through? And
look, only being in this industry for 3 months, I can definitely get a little bit unsure. But then there's also, never judge a book by its cover. A lot of people can come into the open home and be quiet and just, take a little look around the property and not really interact with us, which is fine. We're not going to pressure you into speaking to us, but it's always great for a prospective tenant to introduce themselves. If they have put a application in before inspecting the property, letting us know. So when we go back to the office, we can look at that application. We've done all the references and we can present it to the landlord.
So when you want to be the coolest tenant in Sydney, you want to come through the open house. You want to say g'day to the agent that's there. You want to let them know that you've put in, or you're intending. Great if you've already put in, intending to put an application in. Probably schmooze the property manager a little bit. At least that person could have put a face to a name, rather than which one was that person at the open. Yeah. So I think that's belly to belly. Eyeball to eyeball, very, very important to be the coolest tenant in Sydney. What else do I have to do to be the coolest tenant in Sydney?
Well, as I just said, I think it's really important, if you are interested in the property and you haven't seen it, put in an application before you inspect the property. This will give the leasing consultant or whoever the agent is opening up that open an idea of who you are. And therefore that we can come back and take a look at your application. We know what you're about, and then we can kind of push forward your application and hope to get a holding deposit for you.
What about offering more rent?
Look,
is that what the coolest tenant Sydney does?
I guess that's a question for you, Mark. Is rent more important than the quality of the tenant?
No, but I reckon if you have a cake and eat it too, that's pretty cool. So I reckon with your rent, if you can put an extra couple of bucks on top to give yourself the edge, can be $5. But I think the gesture's pretty cool. And also, you're going to make the property manager look pretty good with the landlord to say, I know we were advertising this, but we got you an extra $5. It's going to help with your application. It's going to help with your property manager. To answer your question, is money more important? Not. I think for most landlords, no. I think for most landlords, they can't. We don't want to forget that these are $700,000-800,000 assets. The rent is a much more insignificant amount compared to the asset value. So if you damage the place, you're damaging something worth $1 million. So I think but you can have your cake and eat it too.
Because we did mention before that the highest rent may not be the best return, therefore that the landlord might have to get rid of that tenant, and that will cost the landlord reletting tenancy fees, and it can also cost them advertisement costs, and that also can if you don't have a good quality tenant in there, it can also affect the landlord into not receiving any rent during that vacancy.
Absolutely. And look, I think another thing landlords can do now that not a lot of landlords know, that there are tenancy insurance products. So sometimes we have tenants that have they've owned a property previously, so they don't have any history. They are 18 or 19 or 20 or 22 coming out of university, and they don't have any history. But we've got a good gut for them, but the landlord's like, yeah, look, I don't know. You can take out tenancy insurance, which is only about a $450 product for the entire year. So to be the coolest tenant in Sydney, you may want to suggest to, when you put in your application, and if the property manager comes back to you and says, look, the landlord's not choosing you, well, and that's happened a couple of times in a row, you may want to opt to say, look, I'm happy to pay for the insurance premium for the first year if the landlord sees me as a risk because I haven't rented before. Bit of a tricky dicky thing to do, but to be the coolest tenant in Sydney, if you're insuring yourself for a landlord who's in doubt about you, pretty cool thing to do.
Definitely. Now I wanted to move on with talking about supporting documentation, because I do believe that this is a really important documentation to put in your application. Now this can include.
This is your favorite topic.
This is my favorite topic because I'm always chasing prospective tenants.
It always comes up. Every time we do this show, it always comes up, supporting documentation. But this is what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bank statements, pay slips, tenant ledgers, anything you can give us, give it to me. I want to see it. I want to see it all.
And it's just that substantiation is just really going to help when you're talking with landlords, guys. So as much as it's a pain in the ass to get all that stuff together, it's just really going to improve your chances. And I know, Sienna, I hear you on the phone all day, every day, asking people for this. For some reason, it's just a weakness for applications that come in that people don't want to submit it, and they've got the information but they just don't submit it. And then when you ask them, they go, okay, I'll put it in early, make it easy. If you make your application less work for the property manager, there is more, and because it's just fruity and full of information, then there's more chance that you're going to be the coolest tenant in Sydney that's going to get that property. So
exactly,
super important.
And we've also had cases where we've had people that actually sold their homes and they haven't had any previous rental history. So as a leasing consultant, what we look out for, if they can provide us supporting documentation, gas, electricity bills, to ensure that they have actually stayed in that property. And also I was going to ask, is there some type of document that they can give us that they have sold their property?
They could give us the address, and then within that we can do our RP data search, which is a land titles sort of information search.
What about providing an agent's number?
And that outgoing agent's going to say, hey, yeah, they presented the property really well. When you go on and see it, you'll actually see the photos that it actually presented well as well. Do you know what I mean? So you'll see the photos of, of how they lived and stuff like that. Now, to be the coolest tenant in Sydney, I do think dress for success. If you're gonna go in with no shoes and ripped clothes and dirty, it's not a good reflection. If you're going to go in polished and looking good, that's going to help. So it's just all of those things coming together. And I know a little bit of it, or most of it, is all common sense, but you'll be surprised from what Sienna's doing, that people aren't consistently doing the common sense thing to get their application approved. And we wish they did, because we want to give the great people that look great on paper and all the way through the property, but sometimes they're just missing pieces. So plug in those pieces, guys. And at the moment in the rental market, it is tough for prospective tenants, and these are the things you need to do to be the coolest tenant out.
Boom.
Happy days. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. I'll see you soon, Mark.
See ya. Thanks again. Bye.